So one of the scariest parts for a lot of builders is where to connect the cables to. Where do they come from? Where do they go? Like, for example, this machine looks beautiful. I just built it with you in my last video, but what do we do with all these cables? And then what do we do with all these hidden cables down here? They just keep popping out. Don't worry, my friends. In this video, I'm going to show you from start to end how to connect the cables, where all the cables come from, and then at the very end, when we're done connecting everything, make it look all pretty. That way, it not only looks great, but you get much better airflow. So let's get started. One of the things that's going to get in our way very quickly is the video card. We're going to have to connect SATA cables back here, and then, route some cables along here. So for the wiring portion, we're just going to disconnect it. Obviously, we're going to need to reconnect it very soon. So now that we have the video card removed, that gives us a lot more access in the board. We're going to start on the bottom left-hand corner with front panel audio. Here it's labeled CFPA. Then work our way to USB 2.0. Front panel headers, power button, reset button, HDD LED. Then work our way up to USB Type-C. USB 3.0, the two 8-pin EPS CPU power connections, ATX 24-pin here. Then we're going to be filling around with ARGB connections and different fan headers and everything. So coming around the back. All right, so this is incredibly daunting at first, but after you've seen it several thousand times, even a handful of times, you get used to it. Okay, so just separating all the cables. It's always best to make everything, even though it is a huge mess, kind of take a minute and sort out all the cabling. That'll make your life so much easier as you go through with the build. Okay, so this strand here and these little strands, they're going to have front panel audio, power switch, reset switch, and then power LED. So let's go ahead and start off by sliding the front panel audio all the way towards the back of the board where we saw the front panel audio header. And then for the front panel headers, we're just going to slide this around the front of the board, or where the front is. That's kind of just settling everything into place for right now. And now I'm going to go ahead and, because we already seen where the USB 3.0 header is, I'm just going to slide it right in here in the rubber grommet, the hole right in front of where it is. Then I'm going to slide the other USB 3.0. Now notice, we only had one USB 3.0 header. I had to buy an adapter for this. So this adapter here goes from USB-C to USB 2.0. So you'll notice right here, there's a little notch. And then on the USB 3 right over here, there's that same little notch. So we're just going to go ahead and join those two notches. Now, since this is a USB 2.0 header, we're gonna go ahead and slide it at the, I think it was towards the beginning. If not, we can always move it later on. I'm just kind of putting things in their place for right now. And then USB-C went towards the bottom of the grommet. I believe that's the way it was. Let's go ahead and slide all these cables in for right now. Makes it easier to spin this unit around. Now every single adapter and everything in this machine, I'm going to have links down in the description below. First off, the front panel audio, you'll notice there's a blocked off pin right over here, which is going to line up with the blocked off pin right over here. That one's a little bit harder to see. I definitely understand. And my hand in the way is not going to make it easier, but it's just kind of hard to film in such tight spots. So then over here we have the USB 2.0 header, the one that we tied up with an adapter or connected with an adapter, converted from USB 3.0 to USB 2. And that one is also going to have a similar blocked off portion right over here that's going to line up with a blocked off portion over here. Now these USB 2.0 headers are 90 degree, so that makes it a little bit harder when you're building like this, but we're gonna have to play that one by ear. All right, so it doesn't fit one way, so just spin it around and it fits the other way. So, all right, now we have two cables connected. Now one of the more difficult ones, let me move this out of the way. The more difficult ones that a lot of people get frustrated on is the front panel connection for power, reset, HED activity, all that good stuff. So reset switch, you'll notice right over here, there's a little purple label there that says RST, and we're just gonna go ahead and connect it right there. Now for that one, there is no polarity, and I'll go over what I mean by polarity in 1 second. And then we have power switch right above that, the red. And I'm not just making them up where they go. There is silk screening on the board, power LED, power on, HDD, LED, RST. It says it on the board, and if not, it'll say it in the manual. Then we have a little bit more complicated because it depends on polarity. We have power LED plus or positive, and then on the right we have power LED negative or minus. Over here we're going to see power LED plus on the left and power LED minus on the right. So minus on the right and then plus on the left. Easy enough. And now we can just slide all the excess down below. All right, and then a very easy one. There's only one way to connect it. Well, actually, no, there's two ways, but one way will work, one way won't. So like we did before, there is a little notch right here on the USB 3.0 head. And then on the header, right over here, we'll find that same notch. So that'll tell us, hey, that'll fit this way. There we go. Tight fit sometimes. USB type C right over here. And then here is the header. And that one is almost the same, just kind of, it fits one way or the other way. Easy enough. Now coming back around the back, we still have a ton more connections, so don't worry about that. And as I mentioned before, now that we have some cables kind of tucked away a little bit neater, let's go ahead and bring out the big guns down here. Sliding some out of the way for right now. So one of the main ones we need to connect is the ATX 24-pin connection, and that's going to go right up here. So we're going to slide it right on inside of this rubber grommet. And actually, let me go behind some of these cables. And I'm just kind of situating it there right now. And then just below that, we're going to connect those two 8-pin EPS connections for the CPU. Now you don't need to connect both. It's more for overclocking, or it's really only for overclocking purposes. Or if you had dual CPUs, we only have one, so it's only for overclocking. And if you didn't overclock, you just need that one connection. Okay, so we're going to raise that ATX 24 pin a little bit and then slide these two under because of the way we're going to have to cable it or connect everything in a minute. Okay, now I'm just going to spin it back around. And now we have this big mess of cables. All right, so right over here, we have the EPS 24 pin, or 8 pins, two 8 pins. So they'll either come in 2x4, two 4-pin connections, or sometimes you'll find them in an 8-pin. They look very similar to 8-pin PCIe connections, so just be very careful on that. Actually, what I'm going to do just to get the cable out of the way is I'm going to connect the ATX 24 pin. That is the main power supply connection to the motherboard. All right, easy enough. It only fits one way as well. There's a notch here, and this little clip just kind of clamps into the notch. Same little notch that's right here and right here. These little clips will latch onto that. Okay, so You can either connect one 4 and then the other 4, which a lot of times is easier. Okay, and then, sorry, that cable got in the way, or the tube. And then we have the other 8-pin connection, other 8-pin EPS, and I'll just connect it 4x4 again. All right, so easy enough connection there. And I apologize, I just realized it was a little bit blurry, but really wasn't a whole lot to see there. So now we have all of this here, and I'll fix this rubber grommet in a minute. No worries about that. All right, so coming around the back again. And we're going to be doing that back and forward, back and forward. Now I'm going to go ahead and connect the SSD. I know that I can just plug it in down here, but I want to show you how that works. All right, so we're going to grab from the power supply a SATA power connector. So you'll notice there's a little L shape right here, kind of hooks off and goes into this line. The bottom of the SSD is going to look the same. So we're just going to go ahead and match that up. All right, now that we have the SATA drive here, I'm gonna go ahead and connect the SATA cable. Now the SATA cable, the SATA data cable, this guy here, that comes with the power supply. What? Eh? Huh? No. Huh? Huh? Or with the motherboard, I'm sorry. So just putting the SSD back there. I took it out just to show you how that works and how to connect it. And now I'm going to go ahead and slide this behind there. And then I'm going to bring it up under here. And then into the bottom grommet. I'm kind of stepping ahead to the cable management portion, but it's kind of sometimes easier to do while you're in there. Okay, so you can see, much like the SATA power, there's a little connector here. That's going to match up with this L right over here. So I'm just going to go ahead. Now the reason I'm putting it here is because this is where the video card is going to go. So nobody has to know we have an SSD. Only that M.2 drive right in here, but hidden, we have that SSD. Now I'm bringing another SATA power cable up through here because we're going to need to power this fan hub right up here with a SATA power connection. Same way we did it for the SSD. Now, I could have gone directly to this cable, but the other fan controller that we're going to install up here also requires power. And yeah, well, you know what? It'll reach. So I'll only use that one in order to keep everything looking nice and neat. And it'll play a big role in a minute. Okay, and then there is that same fan hub has a 4-pin fan header for PWM to control the fan speeds of the fans that we connect to this. So if you remember earlier, I showed you there was a fan header down here. So I'm just sliding that down here. I'm connecting it to one of these two fan headers on the bottom right hand corner of the board. Okay, now of course this could change as we're building, but that's where it's going to go right now. So this power supply comes with a few Molex connections. Mind you, it is a modular power supply, but I always plug in as many as I think I'm going to need. You never know when you're going to need Molex, but for this particular build, I'm not. I'm going to leave it connected, but what I'm going to go ahead and do is just zip tie it all together and just hide it along the back. And now, since we will be needing these PCIe connections in a minute, I'm gonna go ahead and just situating them through, making sure that everything is neat. Going to go ahead and slide them right into this grommet again. right above that SATA connection that we had and right below the USB Type-C connection. And I'm being careful to put one on top of the other for a very good reason, to make it look nice and neat. And we'll go over that when we get back to the video card. Okay, so we're slowly getting rid of cables here. So we're doing well. Now I'm going to reintroduce the fan headers, or the fan hub, I should say, for the side fans and the front fans. Now this one is a bit of a pain because of these cables. They're incredibly short. Like, this is the shortest one, because it's the front bottom fan. So it's kind of hard to make it look nice. And the other bad thing about this hub is, and like a lot of these fan hubs, is you have to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You have to put them in order. If not, they won't work. So if you have 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, they're not going to work. So because we have 6 fans, so I have to see on the map, and I'll go ahead and put it on the screen so you could see it as well. Okay, so this is fan number 8. So probably better if I move that to be fan number 1, because it has to be so close to the front. And that makes cabling a little bit more difficult, but nothing we can't handle, right? And I'm just separating all the fan cables here. All right, so just to connect whichever is shorter, whichever is longer. Now, because of these kind of cables, they're all bendy and everything. It's very, very, very hard to make these look nice. So we're gonna have to take some shortcuts on this one, unfortunately. We'll still make it look as nice as possible. And I can make it look perfect, but this video will then be like 18 hours instead of just 3. So again, connecting all the short ones first. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 and 6 here. And now over here, we're going to need fan power. And then we'll need the 3-pin ARGB connection. Now on this one, I'm not 100% sure about the ARGB side, since it's not a Gigabyte, it's not an MSI, it's not an Asus, it's an EVGA, but it should. Gigabyte is the only one that is very different, since they have a VDG connection, this cable right over here, and most every other motherboard has that 3-pin ARGB connection. Then I'm gonna go ahead and slide it right here in the middle, and which is great because the ARGB header is right there on the board. Okay, and then we'll fix that up with some zip ties in a second. Oh yeah, and then I can go ahead and connect the fan header for the rear fan. I'll go ahead and connect it right over here. That way I can make it look nicer and just bring the cable across over here type of thing. But we'll get to that in a minute. Trying to see what else. The power for that controller hub, fan controller hub, we're gonna go ahead and connect it again to that second SATA cable. Okay, now that everything is on this side, you see we can separate everything perfectly, and then we can have, you know, the stuff that does come around down here, we can also separate down here. Oh yeah, and I found that SSD screw that I was missing from the last video. Not a big deal, but I'd rather not lose it. Okay, so now we're at a point that we have all the cables connected if you wanted to. And the video card. Let's go ahead and connect that real quick. Now, I'm not gonna show you how to install the video card because I showed you in my last video. So I'll just do that real quick. And I will pop in a primer screw just for right now. Nothing permanent on that one. Okay, so the reason I brought in those PCIe cables carefully is you'll notice they kind of form like a little tube or a triangle, kind of a trinity of cables. So that allows us to connect 1, 2, 3, and it's going to kind of look like one entire cable. So let me show you how to connect the PCIe connections if you haven't already. PCIe cables, they'll either be a Bytes 8 or a Bytes 6, so a 6 plus 2. These need 3 by 8s or 3 6 plus 2 connections. Each of these comes separately from the power supply. If you daisy chain them, you risk blue screens and all sorts of weird issues. Okay, so you'll notice there's a little notch, and right over here, this little clip locks that notch into place. So for example, I'm going to do it overhand like this, connecting the 8 pin, and you should see that little click in place. Okay, now that we've done that, we'll just continue all the other 3. And just in case, every single thing you see here, like SATA power, PCIe power, ATX 24 pin, EPS 8 pin, those cables all come from the power supply. I didn't buy them separately, and you can find all that in the description down below. Okay, so now if we come over here, you can see the way that kind of melds into one cable. And well, since we are at the portion that everything is connected, and you don't really care about how your PC looks, you just want it to work, we're basically done with it. Now, if you want to make it look beautiful, showroom ready, and on top of that, to give you better airflow and better cooling, now we're going to get started on that part. All right, so now since we've done that work over here with this PCIe connections, we're just going to go ahead and start zip tying them. Now I'm going to start it off just zip tying and leaving the excess of the zip tie still attached. That makes it easier to just come back and snip, snip, snip everything all at once. And then just push that cable up here. I'm gonna have it connected and attached the USB-C. I'm going to bring it up across and then attach it to the other cables. So we're done right over here for now, and we'll get back to these bottom ones in a second. All right, now one of the most difficult ones is this ATX 24 pin with the 8 pins, but because of the way that we took our time sorting all the cables, it's going to make it a little bit easier. So you see right now, routed all the cables together. Right here we have ATX 24 pin, both 8 pins, and all 3 PCIe 8 pins. Bringing this down, I'm gonna go ahead and connect or tie that USB-C to the USB 3.0 cable. Now this case does bring all these routing configurations, a little rail. I don't like to use those because they want you to use little Velcro tie, and I don't like the way that makes my wiring look. So I'm just going to use zip ties instead. To me, that's so much more clean. Okay. Then all these cables, I'm bringing them all the way through and then kind of molding them as they go down, massaging them. And it's kind of hard to see, I know, with all these cables in the way, but we are going to join them in a second. So all the cables that you'll notice, all these little teeny tiny cables, I'm bringing towards the big strand over here. And then there's some additional ones that I will be sliding into here, since essentially they're all going to be hidden. Okay, then I'll be using these thicker cables, the USB 3 cables, kind of creating like a shield blocking off a lot of this. Unfortunately, not all of it, but a lot of it. So up here, just grouping together a lot of the cables that don't quite reach that ATX cable. Now I'll be attaching that. Just trying to slide the zip tie under all the cables. They're going to be two separate strands, but still tied together. I couldn't do the exact shield type I wanted to do, but that's okay. Now just bring it around to the PCIe cables so they don't sag. Kind of using the zip tie as a little harness. Now, one thing we have to realize about this case is it has an inner side panel and then an outer side panel. So we might get a little bulge here, but I'm going to try to minimize that as much as possible. And the bulge will be mainly with the inner panel, not so much with the outer panel. And now to bring that in a little bit more, I'm going to go ahead and zip tie this little rail to this big strand, helping to compress it a little bit more. Starting to take shape nicely. Bringing that cable in so that it could be part of this mold here. Now some of these are unfortunately very difficult or impossible to hide, so we have to unfortunately settle for some. Again, you can make it look all nice, but you might spend hours doing that. All right, now since we're pretty much done with the bottom, now we have to tackle the top up here. Now, as I mentioned, this one is going to be very difficult because it's a rat's nest of cables that are all kind of squiggly and unfortunately not very friendly to deal with. Okay, this won't be too bad. It could look worse. So I am just joining all these cables to this strand over here, kind of making it a little bit more fluid. And unfortunately I can't bring that one, but that's okay. And like we did before, kind of with the shield, I'm blocking a lot of the cables behind that so you don't see that huge mess. And actually, what I'm going to do, I'll give you a special treat at the end. I don't typically do, but because I'm so happy with this that I didn't expect, I'm gonna do it. I'll tell you in a minute. Just kind of hoping I didn't mess it up by saying that. Okay, that works. Okay, so that looks pretty good. And I know it's very difficult to see with this. It'll come off in one sec. Just a few more things I need to tidy up. So what I do with a lot of these cables, because right over here it's just very difficult to get into, I just kind of bend it at the very end. So you see it forms like a little L right here. Then when I slide it in, then I can easily grab it and then just zip tie that together. And now because these clips are becoming a pain, I gotta get rid of them for right now. And then always hide them if you can, the little ends that you just cut. Now, one of the things that you don't want to do is bring needless stress to connectors. So make sure you don't pull anything way too much just to make it look pretty, because then it's gonna not look so pretty when it doesn't work because you broke it. And unfortunately, I do love to zip tie, so I have a lot of needless zip ties. Don't get excited, we're not done yet. A few more bits and pieces and then we'll be done soon. All right, so just a few connections we need to do down here. First off, I will zip tie the USB 2.0 header to this guy, Just bringing them all together so they look more like one cable. Can't use a little zip tie for that one, not enough room. ARGB. Now for the ARGB, since it does have that VDG connected cable, I'm just going to bring that down right over here and zip tie that cable to itself just so we don't see that VDG connection hanging out there for no reason. Okay, that looks a little bit nicer. And then even though these are not the same cables, you can see here there's two cables. So yeah, SATA. So I'm going to go ahead and zip tie the SATA data cable to the audio cable, the SATA power, so they can kind of look like they're the same cable. Let's see how that looks. Perfect. So now instead of three cables, there's two cables. Okay, now zooming out a little bit, we can see there are no pieces of cable hanging over. Everything looks nice over here. And oh, we have one guy right over here. We just did that too. So we've built an entire PC from the ground up and then we cabled it together. So very cool, looks beautiful. 100% perfect? Probably not, but still pretty good. You can see all the cables look very nice. All the fans that we connected on the front and the side, they are connected right over here. And then that one rear cable or that one rear fan from Corsair, we have connected to the fan hub here. And then the fan hub connected to one of the PWM headers actually right up here. Every single cable is connected. Everything should work. Now the part I never do on video, which I'm gonna do now, is plug it in, turn it on, see what happens. Let's check it out. All right, so this is going to be the very first time that I power on the system. I don't know if the power supply is on, but let's see. Okay, power supply must not be on. Okay, so you saw we had power. Something is louder than it should be. Oh, that's probably these fans. And we should have video any second now. First time I've powered it on, so I don't know how long this post takes. Yep, and we got video. Look at that, sweet. We've gone through a complete build from building it, the hardware you see right over here, to cabling it, connecting every single cable, and then making every single cable look pretty. Now, the next video we're going to do is on how to install Windows, how to flash the BIOS, and basics on how to configure the BIOS. And then after that, hopefully we get to do some overclocking. Now let me know what you think down in the comments below. Did you like this entire journey? What do you think I've missed? I feel like I covered everything, but I'm human. I'm sure I've missed something. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, as always, please ask below. I respond to everybody. As always, please do click like and subscribe. It helps keep the channel afloat. As well, if you feel like I've helped you and you want to chip in a buck or two, go ahead, buy me a cup of coffee. That helps as well. Again, this is your friend Iggy with ThisBytesForYou, showing you how to wire manage, how to get every single cable connected, and then how to make it look nice. Iggy with ThisBytesForYou out. See you guys.